light is on. That's good. I'm going to put that down there and I'm going to do my spiel.
Am I looking at you? Or?
You can look anywhere. You can look at the camera, and then when we talk, we can look at each other. All right. Let me start with my little spiel.
Okay. Yeah.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of the Indie Author Life. I'm here with someone who is maybe not necessarily big in the indie author world, but she is big in my life, and that is my mum. So this is Mum.
Hi.
She was the first person that I told about this project that has come to life, which is my debut fantasy young adult book, Still Waters Run Deep. Cannot believe I'm holding it in my hands, but the journey started 6 years ago.
Yes.
And started, maybe I let you know about it 5 years ago in 2020. And I said before, you were the first person that I ever told that I was
That's so privileged.
writing a book. Yeah.
And to see you with the book in your hand now, Mon, it's a bit of a surreal experience. I just had a moment thinking, wow, okay.
It's here.
Yeah, from the very beginnings when you first told me, and the first 9 chapters? Or that you gave me to
the first
to edit.
9 chapters.
Yeah.
Which, it was a process where it was super casual. Like you weren't, I wasn't like, oh, Mum, please check every single little thing, because I didn't want to put, obviously.
Which I did.
I know, that's right, you did. You did more than I expected.
Well, I think when you first mentioned it, and then you said that you were writing, and you actually said it was very casual about it, because you said that you had these characters in your head since you were little, and that you just wanted to get them out on paper. And if nobody else reads this, then that's fine. So it made me feel comfortable reading it, thinking, at first I thought, well, it's kind of more like a journal for you. You know how people like to journal their thoughts and what have you. So I was happily editing and what have you. Little did I know, 6 years forward,
6 years later, we'd be here.
You're showing me this. And if I had have known the gravity of, what you were doing, not that you probably did at the time as well.
No.
I may have been a bit more nervous in editing, or thinking, I've got to get this exactly right. So to me, I was having fun with it. And I think also that you may not have expected me to edit it so kind of brutally.
No. But I think brutal. You think it's brutal, but I'm very used to critique throughout studying at uni, with doing the creative stuff there, that you may have thought it was brutal, but it's not. It's not. It's important to be critical.
Well, also being a mum, you don't want to, you're always praising, and you don't want to sort of deflate anyone's dreams. And
but you're also very honest too. I think it's good as mums to be honest.
Well, fair. That was always what I hopefully instill in both you and Jess. But I wasn't my genre as well. No. It wasn't something that I'm used to reading. So I probably struggled at first with getting into it, but that's me with most books. But you made it so visual, you made it so accessible. There wasn't any sort of like complicated names or what have you, or sort of had to remember generations or anything like that. I think you had a lovely technique from the very beginning of making it real and in a fantasy world.
I'm glad.
So it was kind of like, and I think you've got a really good way of, even though they're characters from a fantasy world, you can relate to modern day contemporary living. And how people feel about different things, pleasing their family, getting involved with people that you probably shouldn't be with, but for some reason you've been forced into it.
Yeah.
All sorts of things that happen to this in this contemporary world, but
Yep.
you've written it in the fantasy world, and in some ways a world you can escape into, and probably not realise it probably is a contemporary sort of world.
The
theme,
yeah.
But it's sort of it kind of like it follows that journey into a fantasy world we can escape into.
Yeah.
And
the themes are
and
relatable.
also probably associate with modern day.
Yeah, I love that. I think that is exactly what I wanted to touch on, because we all draw experiences from our world and what we know, but writing in a fantasy, creating that in a fantasy world is like a vessel to explore those ideas that are, I don't know, like prevalent and big topics in our modern world. And you could put that in a modern setting, but I always wanted to do something that was fantasy as well.
I think it makes it a little bit more interesting and a bit
a bit different.
And people probably want to escape the modern day to day. You know, they probably don't want to hear about getting into a car and all that sort of stuff, and going
and some
to work.
do, and some people do.
Yes, those who it appeals to, this sort of writing. It's very enticing. I got into it quite. So, Moni, tell me about the characters that you said that you had in your head when you were little. And I don't know when that started. Can you explain when that may have started?
I always had characters in my head that probably stemmed from, and I know this is popular that people get into like fan fiction and things like that, which is interesting because I never really got into like writing fan fiction. But fan fiction is when there's an existing story, like say for example Star Wars, and people then write their own characters and stories and stuff in the Star Wars universe. So for example, my first ever like characters that I made in my head were, this is when I was like eight or 9. Well, I was just drawing them because drawing was like the medium to get it out there, were based on like Star Wars characters. So, back in the day, and I used to hang out, with Maggie a lot at primary school. We'd always make up stories in our head about like playing as Jedis and things, and then we'd take on that persona. Then I started drawing that stuff, and you probably remember my little drawings of like the characters with the lightsabers, and like,
often with a sword
or a lightsaber and all that stuff. And then when I got into gaming and things like that, I generated these ideas about certain stories that I had in my head. But I think sometimes, I think I was always interested in creating new worlds based on even like the literature and movies that I was watching anyway. I always wanted to create something akin to that, but I didn't think I was going to write something. I just wanted to draw what I thought in my head and the stories that I was making.
Probably when you were that young, you probably didn't have the word, like the vocabulary or the words in your head, not like you've got when you're older. So it was probably a nice way to start, because
it was a good way to start.
When you started writing Still Waters Run Deep, you had all these words and life experience which added to probably the gravity of it a bit more. So
definitely.
Maybe.
And I remember though the catalyst for starting to make concrete stories in my head was probably when we'd go on family holidays and go on long car rides, and I'd be listening to my music, and maybe it was a way to entertain myself too, but I would start making up all these stories in my head and then starting to draw them, and then being inspired by cartoons that I was watching, like Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is very similar to the world that I've written for Still Waters Run Deep, because it's an elemental universe where people control the elements and stuff like that. But the original idea I had was actually in like a low fantasy setting where there were certain characters that could control elements, but they lived in like the modern world. So it was a bit different to like the Avatar Last Airbender story, because that's in like a fantasy world. But then, of course, this is, Still Waters Run Deep is set in high fantasy world, so a world completely different to ours. So drawing, because I was always drawing, that became the medium for me to express the characters that I had in my head. And I remember, I think you picked up that I was really interested in drawing because I remember you taking me to like a manga drawing class at like the library.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that. And then also the first ever like drawing book that I got was how to draw. It was like how to draw manga.
Yeah.
But it was specifically like female characters.
Yes.
And it was just in our local bookshop in Mount Waverley.
It was all there.
That was like, like the catalyst to expand my mind. And I remember like my favourite kind of night, like whether it would be a school, usually it would be like a Friday night. I would sit up in my bedroom and have the book there and start drawing and trying to copy. And that was probably when I was like 11, 12, 13. Yeah. Even, probably up until I was like 18, I would just draw and I'd have my sketchbooks, and my sketchbooks would come with me everywhere, and the characters in there. Like sometimes I'd draw characters that were like Sailor Moon, Naruto. Some of them would be, what else was I into?
Well, I guess Pokemon in a way. Because I mean,
definitely
in a big way.
Yeah,
it's almost like it was timing.
Yeah, timing.
Because these characters, like when I was growing up, apart from Kimber the White Lion,
which I still watch.
I now realise there's a manga.
Yeah,
but did not
like
have
an anime.
Didn't know that term at all, and so you taught me all that world, and to me it was fascinating as well. So but it just happened to be appearing at the time when you were, whether
it had a resurgence.
Like, is it the chicken or the egg? Well, where you would have, if it wasn't available in the general public, it would have probably something else. But this is how you went down, and the track you went down. So it sort of suited, and you grabbed onto that.
Oh yeah, the stories
very
were like
readily.
Epic.
But you see that, like I have worked in a kindergarten for many years, and often little ones, and I'm a firm believer that their interests start very, very, very young.
Very young.
And if you can switch into, as an adult or a parent, that interest and let them run with that, I think they thrive, because that's what they, inside genuinely love.
That's the path that they want to take.
And it was lovely to see that you and Jess, like, she had a different direction. But
Jess is my sister, by the way.
Sorry.
No, that's right. Jess,
I expect you.
I'm sure Jess she'll make an appearance sometime soon. But
so it was lovely to see that, and just to run with that, and and I loved it because it was a new world for me.
Yeah,
because I was seeing all these different characters I've never seen in my life, and never really being a Star Wars fan, but it sort of drew me down that sort of way, and so I was enjoying it as well.
Yeah, enjoying the process.
I didn't see any harm in it. It seemed all quite
just a bit of fun
and what have you. So
I don't think it could ever be harmful for kids to embrace their creativity. Maybe sometimes some parents maybe don't see the value in it, but I'm glad that you did.
Probably won't. Everyone, each to their own. But to me, that was what I sort of observed over the years, and I thought that was it felt right that children, to me, should, if they can, follow their sort of interests with a passion. It doesn't, if there's a different career direction they want to go in, that's okay too, but
that's another thing.
But
too.
you kind of sort of stayed with your passion, and you made it a career as well.
Yes, but it was definitely like I had to really think about what I was going to do, because there was a big part of my mind thinking, I'm going to grow out of this, and I'm going to have to step up and find another like a serious career and all that stuff. So I thought one day I'll just stop drawing and I will, just grow out of it. But it never went away, that passion. In fact, it only grew more intense and more serious the older I got, and it became something that I knew I had to honour the stories in my head because they weren't going away, and I knew internally I was frustrated because I'd wanted so badly to put it out there into the world, but I didn't know how to do so. So part of that was trying to write a graphic novel, but that, didn't work. So then writing became also a catalyst to kind of heal that, scratch the itch / heal the void that was there, which I didn't think I had it in me that I could write at all.
That's interesting because you won an award for writing at Avila.
Oh, yeah.
So, so there's something in that as well.
I think I was just intimidated by people that read a lot, and therefore I felt like they knew what they were doing. And because I was more like I loved stories, but I wasn't as we all know, I'm a slow reader, so I don't churn through books so much. So I thought, oh, well, if I'm not at that level, how can I write something? Yes. And that was the hardest part to grapple with, to just say screw it and just do it.
And that's what we should all do, because we've got this mind, all of us, that we create these narratives that
I can't do this because I can't do.
But it's so wrong, because everybody's most likely thinking the same thing.
They are.
And they're observing others thinking, oh, they're better. But in reality, they're not. And we're the ones that were creating this fantasy world, which is so not true. So when you get in there and just do it and enjoy what you want to do.
Yep.
I think with getting back to your book, I was excited too, because it was COVID.
Yes, the 2020 time.
And so I used to meet, Monty and I used to meet up in the grounds of Monash University here in Melbourne. And
because it was between our two houses.
Between the two houses. It was in a 5K radius, which was our restriction.
We're in Melbourne, so we had to deal with the really dire lockdown situation.
It gave us something me to look forward to. So I think it was a Tuesday evening.
Yeah,
we'd go for a walk, and you'd give me the secret documents to read.
I know, it was very secretive because we'd be rocking up with our masks on, and it would be very
handing over.
Hello, here's the document.
Here's mine. Here's yours. But and luckily there was one coffee shop open, so that was the saving grace, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But also, I think, Mon, you did start writing this book, and then you had all these characters. But what impressed me, and I'm sure, and with all the writers from now on, people who write books, what impresses me is how to get the sequence of events in your novels in order. How do you even remember what someone's done? So perhaps just run through, that sort of area, how you got that all to come together. And
I definitely had to take my time with it. I think that, yes, I say I'm a slow reader, but I am also a slow writer, where I do need to make sure I am constantly always thinking about the story, weirdly enough. And so it's always in my mind, even if I'm not writing it, so that when I do get to write it, I'm just like, oh yeah, because that's what I was thinking of before, and therefore that links into that and all that. However, that won't always be the foolproof saviour of it all. And I can tell you, even when I was working with Laura at Hummingbird Editing, my editor, she still was picking up inconsistencies on certain things, whether it's the timeline or perhaps the special abilities that I've written. Some of the characters have a few inconsistencies that even she picked up, and the editing was done a couple of months ago in this 6-year process. So it's one of those things that is really hard. Some other people might have some other authors might have an easier time with it. Maybe some people, and I did have an idea in my head writing down or putting on sticky notes what each character, what each chapter is about in the sequence and things like that, which maybe I might do so I don't forget. But because I'm constantly thinking about the story in every single waking moment of my day, I can recall it. And even if I'm not thinking about it, what I'll have to do is I'll probably just, do a quick reread of some things past, then get into it. But it's something that I constantly have to keep referring back to the subject matter that I've written before so that I get it right. And then at the very end, read the whole book again, and then there'll be inconsistencies. I think I just, am resolved to the fact that there probably will be inconsistencies, and I just need to pick up on that and get other people to look at it as well.
When do you sort of stop looking for that though? When do you think enough is it? I mean,
you got to call it.
It'll never be, yeah, exactly. What makes you? At what point do you think that you would say, okay, this is
probably when it gets to the editor?
Yeah,
where it's even before it gets to the editor.
Yeah,
I know that having other people look at it, the term for other people reading it is the beta readers. Okay. So I guess you would be considered a beta reader where, you don't rely on other people to pick up on it, but there will be things that you don't see. Anything that you put out there, even at work, with graphic design and stuff, there'll be things that other people see that you don't, and it's so helpful because our minds are usually one track minded anyway.
Yeah.
For other people to help with that. So to get back to when I stop, it's probably just before the editor, and then once the editor does their pass through, then I can confidently go, all right, I think we're ready to go. We're done.
And do you agree that you did get a lot of great reviews for your first little short story about Alara and the Passing. And the reviews were I thought, very very good, very fair.
This is Alara and the Passing as well, everyone, in case you can refer to that in your own world. But yeah, that was such a great experience.
Exactly. Did you expect those?
No. I did not expect it. And when it first started happening, because I didn't even realise how to do this kind of thing, market a book. And so when I started with Alara and the Passing, which was a short story that I wrote after this one, Still Waters Run Deep, by the way. But it's so short that I thought, let's just do it. Let's put it out there. And for people to engage with it at all was unbelievably...
It was very impressive. Yeah.
So gratifying, and so I'll always be thankful for whoever picked it up and read it. And then we're the same for Still Waters Run Deep.
Yeah.
Already I'm sitting on a few, 3 ARC reviews, so advanced reader copy reviews for Still Waters Run Deep, and all of them have been so detailed, so well thought out that it just it's surreal. It feels like, oh my God, it's out of my head and now into others.
Yes.
And just for people to pick up on certain things, I had a reviewer say that it was that particular group of people in this book, Still Waters Run Deep, that were in a cult. And I know that in my head, I'm writing it kind of like a cult, but for someone else to pick up on that as well,
yes,
I was like, yes, this is amazing, amazing. I was just, blown away with the depth of how people are engaging with a project that just used to live in my mind.
I know. It's
mind-blowing.
You can't even get your head around that, and
always thankful. Always grateful.
And you have to be open to these reviews and these critiques and embrace the good points that they say.
Yep.
Take that to heart,
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think what I love about reviews, and I know as authors we're not supposed to really because reviews are for other readers per se, but all the reviews that I've got, you know, whether they're positive, negative, whatever, I just am so impressed that people are able to put their own, or willing to engage with my work, first of all, and willing to engage with it in a personal way, because their reviews are personal. It's how they personally engaged with my work, and I love it. I just think it's amazing. That's one of the best parts of it, is to see how other people perceive your book in whatever capacity that might be. I mean, it's awesome if they really like it, but it's also really interesting for them to pick out things that were like, oh yeah, I'm not sure about this and all that, because it makes, oh, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, so it's awesome. Yeah.
I think I love the way you moved into different worlds. I know she was on a journey, but she, you know, moved to different worlds and like the desert and the, you know, and it was totally different.
Asta, right?
Yes.
Sorry,
Asta.
No, and I'll pull out a little graphic for people.
It was almost refreshing that she went to that area, because, you know, it was quite, it just changed it up a bit. I think that was a clever move in the book.
I wonder if we can see. Oh, it might be a bit
glossy.
Glossy. So that's right. I'll insert a picture of Asta here, who we're talking about, who's the protagonist of Still Waters Run Deep. Yeah, she travels across many worlds. Yes. many worlds, and meets many different people.
And it's I don't know if it's popular now, but you drawing the characters of the book, and seeing a visual of the characters, rather than people creating the visual in their own heads. So what made you think? What made you do that? Go both, like with the because you are
because I am a drawer. Well, because I like to illustrate. It made sense for me to visualize the characters in the only kind of way I know how to, which was to draw. But Asta kind of had a different appearance before she looked like how she does now. She actually had a little bit more of like a darker sort of look about her. Maybe I can find, actually, sorry, I'm going to cut across the camera here. I have a big book of my illustrations that I've kept from, I don't know whether you've seen this.
Okay, to be revealed.
To be revealed. I have a big book of like my drawings that I've done throughout the years.
This is behind the scenes.
This is behind the scenes. Yeah, pretty much, because there was
I haven't seen this book.
You haven't?
No.
I know you would have seen some of these characters, that's for sure. Some of these old drawings that I have, which I'll have to review. Sorry for everyone not seeing the one that, okay. Here's a preliminary drawing of Asta, but she had even a different name as well. I will also insert this image into the video for people to see it closer. But basically, this was a black and white drawing of Asta looking a little bit more active, I guess. It's a black and white drawing of her.
Wow. Okay.
And I don't even know whether it was water that she was controlling. I think it was just also some kind of magic thing, and that was done in 2014. So I was probably, how old would I be? 19?
Yeah.
19. But I'm trying to find a really
I have to say, when you did draw your characters, you gave them, and I remember saying this even when you were little, that you'd show me a picture of a character and I'd say, people can draw and it looks wonderful, but Mom, I felt, gave it a movement and a depth. And I remember saying that to you. You give it a character. You gave
certainly tried
drawing a character.
Like a backstory kind of thing.
Yeah, you can actually see, movement. You could see there was more depth to the drawing, and that takes a certain skill.
No, thank you. I do appreciate you picking up on that, because I think part of it is what makes it interesting for me is if there is a backstory to it. Sorry, I really want to find... okay.
Wow.
All right. So this, it's kind of hard to see, But like, oh, it's probably really hard to see this one on camera.
Okay.
But
well, she's a very different
looking gothic kind of person. I know. I feel like we should do a compare the pair, but I will show you. This is my. Oh yeah, wherever this other picture of Asta is here. Maybe I have one in my. Here we go. Actually, I think I've got one.
Okay, let's have a look.
If you want to hold that one.
Yeah.
So she's kind of a bit like zombified, a bit of a zombie.
That was probably the thing of the day. That was 2010.
2010.
So
I would have been like 15 when I drew this one.
Zombie, what do you call it?
Like undead.
What's it? Christmas? What is it called?
Nightmare Before. Yes.
Before Christmas.
Nightmare Before Christmas. I love Sally from Nightmare Before Christmas.
So there we go.
So one day, I mean, I'll probably have to zoom in on all this stuff, but yeah, there's a bit of a change between her aesthetic and the vibe there. I think that I definitely, when people go ahead and read Still Waters Run Deep, there will be elements of the undead, and I won't say too much more. And so maybe that's where I was already thinking of the story from back in there, and maybe I was thinking that Asta would take on some of that, but just read the book and you'll read more about it. But the original concept, she was a lot darker and maybe even a bit more regal looking as well, because in this image, in this drawing I did, which was done with watercolor paint. She is wearing like a gown, but Asta in Still Waters Run Deep is not from royalty or anything like that. She's kind of just a commoner, I guess. So yeah, that was pretty much the original idea that I had for Asta, the character that is now known today as Asta. So
maybe that's a whole new book.
Honestly, it could be. And otherwise, I don't know. I mean, this was kind of another Asta-esque kind of drawing. But again, like, it's still, like, she's got that green skin. And I think it's interesting because the character Gatira now has, like, that kind of bluey skin tone, which is indicative of her state. And so this was another concept that I did of the character now known as Asta. And that was 2011. So anyway.
So with the names too.
Yeah.
So, this I've never heard of.
Asta
or...
No. I think I didn't give them names like until... I think I had names in my head, but I wasn't necessarily like sold on them as well until I started writing, and it's like, oh, I actually now have to give them a name.
Yeah.
Because even also another thing too is that the characters don't have last names in my book, which I had a discussion with Laura, my editor, and I think it was Simone S.K. May at the Indie Author Networking Group event that I went to, and I asked them, does it matter if they don't have last names? And it didn't matter too much, so I'm just going to leave it like that. Just going to leave it because I could only get so far as first names, and names are kind of hard.
Yeah,
it's kind of hard.
Do many novels have like full, the characters? Do they?
Yeah,
they do.
I'm thinking. Okay. Well, I'm reading Woman of Wolves right now, and the last name is pretty important to the main character because there's like a lineage to it where it's like, this is the family that owns this part of the kingdom. And I think if the last name is important to like a legacy of the family, then I think that's why it would be important to have a last name. But, it's one of those things that like I don't often remember the last name of characters anyway.
I know.
I don't know. Like I remember the first name, but the last name, it's like, oh yeah, it's like a bit of an afterthought for me. So I hope that's not a deal breaker for people. It's like, oh, you don't know the last name, but
I kind of was, names can be, to me, that sometimes with this sort of fantasy. Is this the right word?
Yeah.
Often the names are quite different to what you know.
Yeah.
And then you're trying to it's almost stressful to try to remember all this sort of, if there's like lineage or whatever for me.
Yep.
So as I said before, I was kind of relieved that it was
pretty straightforward.
It was pretty straightforward,
Yeah.
but you know, it's each to their own sort of thing. So
actually, I think
so I don't think I'd get too hung up about that. It's just
one of those things that you think about and you're like, oh.
Well, it's another thing. I didn't even think of that either, how difficult it might be to come up with names of characters that in any novel, really. So
definitely.
It's really impressive that, you know,
it's one of the hardest things.
All the writers that I've seen you on, you know, interview on the podcast and what have you, how impressive, and
it's also
how
unique
everybody is.
Too.
Very much
so unique, even though there's like a similar theme within the fantasy genre. It's also unique how people come across, and I've loved doing the Indie Author Life podcast for that reason.
Yeah,
because I just get such a kick out of listening to how people approach something that I do as well in a completely different way.
Yeah,
I just love it. I just love hearing about how other people write and create stuff.
I feel now writing is slightly less restrictive to what you can say and what you can portray than when I was growing up. I mean, a lot of things were hinted about, you know, saying, you know, same-sex, you know, relationships and things like that. But it was never as, can I say, out there?
Yeah,
or,
like overt.
It's more pronounced now. It's freer. People seem freer to write that way, and it's really, really lovely to see that. And I think writing is important for younger generations to get a feel of the world as well. What's, you know, this is what's portraying in the world at this moment, that things are becoming a bit more coming out of the shadows, more into the light. You know, there's a long way to go, but it seems like there's it's more than a start. It's young people of today writing about their feelings a lot more, and it's quite lovely to see. You know, it's not as suppressed as it was when I was growing up. You know, in the 70s and 80s and things like that. You know, it was started, but it was nothing like it is now.
No,
and
that's so true. Were there any books similar to like maybe what's another, like Harry Potter, for example? Were there any similar young adult books like that in the 70s?
I don't remember, but then that wasn't the books I was reading at the time. There may have been. So I've got no idea.
That's true. I'm sure there was stuff out there, but it's not as like, it wasn't probably as easily accessible, even because you grew up on King Island as well, so you kind of had what you could get as well.
That's true. But I was I loved horses, so I read Black Beauty and all those. The Silver Brumby. But I did love ghost stories, so I loved any and so that was my sort of thing.
Supernatural.
And you know, young like teenagers, detective stories. The Three Investigators, which was written, I think, by Alfred Hitchcock.
Really?
And they were great stories. So that was my thing. But there may have been out there, but I think, you know, perhaps the beginning of maybe Harry Potter, it may have started that sort of world of, I don't know, there may have been others before that.
True.
But it was definitely a world of different characters, and I think it got a lot of people reading. You know, there certainly was a lot of science fiction out there when I was, you know, with Star Wars and then Doctor Who, all those sort of things.
Doctor Who.
But that was a different world, but in a science fiction sort of way. And look, there was lots of stories about knights and King Arthur and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, in that way, that's kind of a similar sort of world, I guess, you know, with the fantasy sort of world. Was that something Avalon, the Mists of Avalon or something like that? That was
which is still a very popular concept today, because we just read Found. That one where I showed you by Gabby Skeldon, I think. You know, the one about the Merlin The Heir of Merlin.
Yes.
Yeah, which I really liked.
Yes,
That's an
I
indie
did
author
too.
as well.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
shout out to Gabby
Yes,
Skeldon as
yes,
well.
I read it.
I loved it for the cover as well.
Yes.
But yeah, so
that's
it's
another
popular
thing. The covers are incredible.
Yeah, the covers.
And I
it's
was in
important.
Dymocks in the city in Melbourne the other day, and the fantasy section and the covers. You just to walk through there and look at the covers was really
it's the best.
Really
It's
nice.
best.
Yeah,
I love looking at
well
covers.
done.
Yeah, I know, to all the authors out there that
Yeah.
are doing it.
Yeah.
Should I ask you some questions? I have one question here, which is, what did you immediately think when I told you I was writing a book?
I just I don't think I was all that shocked.
Surprising.
Because I thought you were always in that world, and the fact that you did say to me, I think when you, that I'm just going back to the fact that you said that you're writing a book, you're almost sort of shy about it.
I was very shy.
Yeah.
I was so like nervous.
Yeah, it's
about doing it.
because of why do you think?
I just think I felt like I was inadequate to do it. Truly,
Yeah,
I felt that I was not, and I've learned not to think like that. But I was like, oh, I just don't like. Yeah, I did an arts degree, and in uni, high school, we all have to do English, but I didn't do literature. And so I thought,
it doesn't. Yeah,
I know, right? I know, but it was all these like preconceived notions. Yes. But I just thought I was. How could I do it if I don't live and breathe literature, sort of thing? So I just felt that I was inadequate to do it. But I had to do the mental work to convince myself. And it's funny because I would never say to anyone what I said to myself. I would always encourage someone to write. I would always encourage, but we are our own worst critic. And I would always encourage someone else to write. But how come I couldn't give myself the permission to do it? Probably because I treated it so seriously, and so
you didn't want anyone probably to say, oh, you can't.
Yes, I didn't want anyone else to poo-poo me.
Sometimes that's all it takes, isn't it? That you have these dreams, and then all it takes is one person
to say
who's got no really authority, for their I think it's worse if people give an opinion without you asking. But even if you do ask, that's very hard for somebody.
Yeah.
And I think that that can be a catalyst for whether you do it or not.
If
from someone else's opinion.
Yeah.
And it's not right, you know. But I get it, because I've also lived that life too, where you you take on board what other people think, and then now that I'm a lot older, I don't take that on board as much. But gee,
it's like a learning thing.
It is. So I could have said, but I think I come from a background of we were all given kind of free range in our dreams. I think we weren't criticised in the way we wanted to go and discover life. So I think that was my background, and anyone who wants to give something a go is well worth it. And I think we showcase people who have degrees in certain areas or think they're experts.
Yeah.
And that's fine, and that's well done to them and amazing.
Yeah.
But there's the people I feel that probably are the happiest in their own world and in their life, are those people that quietly do things and have an innate experience, an innate love of doing something, and they're able to bring it out without listening to the critique of others.
Yep.
And I feel that you kind of did that, but I knew you were nervous because you did say to me, I'm thinking of writing a book. It's all these characters that I've had in my head that I need to get on paper. So you were justifying it to me.
Yeah.
And that's more than fine. And it made sense. And I thought, yes, I thought it was a nice way to explore wherever it took you. Explore your writing skills.
Maybe because it was so big, it was like a momentous part in my life that I just almost didn't want anything to kind of disrupt it by having people shut down, which is funny because, you know, every single person that I told never shut me down, never said anything like, oh, that's stupid, that's kind of, you know, all that stuff. It's just been the opposite, you know, especially yourself. And shout out to some other critical people in my life, like Ryan, my husband, who was like, oh, yeah, do it, you know. He would never tell me not to do things and all that stuff. And he's not necessarily like a super big reader or anything like that. And I think maybe it is like the people that aren't necessarily so heavily into like the literature world that can be a bit open-minded about that stuff and just like, oh my gosh, you've written a book. That's awesome. And I think we've got to remind ourselves about that too, where other people will see you do it and they'll just be impressed that you've written a book. Because I am. Every time I see a book that someone's written, I'm just, wow, someone has written it. They've written a book.
So anyone who's thinking about doing something like this, just go for it. Because, you know, it'll open up a whole new world for it. Like I've seen that happen to Mon.
Yes, that's it. And it's changed my life.
Yeah.
It's made me a happier person overall.
Yeah.
Not like I was ever truly like unhappy in the way that, I think I was only really unhappy when I wasn't honouring my drawings and my creativity. And when I started to open up that kind of stuff again by drawing and doing all that, you know, it just clicks. And then writing, bringing it to life was like the next big click. Yeah. So,
and also I think you've met like-minded people, which is huge.
Some incredible people that I've
lovely
met.
People.
And I want to ask you, did you ever think I would write a novel? Like, honestly.
And have it out like this?
Yeah,
to get it to this stage?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Whatever you think, whatever you want to answer to that.
I think deep down I did. I think it would actually go further because that's the sort of person you are. You have a drive in you that you like to see things through.
True.
True. At no point have I ever seen Mon do something half-hearted. So
for better or for worse.
And it's sort of, you know, so at some point it would have been something. But having said that, though, you know, it's still surreal to see.
Oh, it's still surreal.
You know, and the journey that it has actually taken to get to this point is it was a lot longer than we anticipate. You know, sometimes you just think, oh, I'll write a book, you know, just, you know,
pop it out there,
get it printed and away you go.
Which is easier more than ever to do that, but still it's a goddamn process. It's long.
It would be satisfying and hugely satisfying and rewarding. So oh gosh, I think yes. I think yes.
Yep. You think overall,
Yes, I did.
Yep. Yep.
When
that
I think
makes
back.
sense. Yeah. I didn't think I would write a novel. I didn't think I would do it, but here we are, so I'm glad.
Wow, that's interesting.
I know, I honestly didn't think.
You have little faith.
I know, which I'm learning. I've learned.
No, well, it's easy for somebody to see the person. It's hard for the person to see themselves.
Yep, that's true. I've got one last question for you. Okay. If you could describe Still Waters Run Deep in 3 words, what would those words be?
I can't describe anything in 3 words.
Look, any words that pop into your head.
Oh, gosh.
Any.
Well, I'm thinking a wild ride.
A wild ride.
That's 3 words.
A wild ride.
Okay, here we go. That'll do.
But any sort of other buzzwords I will give as a what do you call it? Bonus. Any sort of like vibes.
Human strength.
Yep. Human strength.
Yep. I can't do 3 words, Mon.
Any word, like anything that you associate with the book. So human strength is one of them. What about like the scenery?
Oh, visualization is beautiful. Beautiful visualization, the power of human strength, the ability to keep going.
Yeah, endurance.
Endurance.
Stuff. Yeah.
Endurance, strength, and Beautiful.
Oh,
here we go.
I love it. That's amazing. No, I love it. And I was going to ask you, wait, did you have any more questions that you wanted to ask?
I don't think so. I think we're pretty.
What did you think of? I've got one question that this is what Paola, shout out to my beautiful friend Paola, who also was such a big motivator for me to write this book. She was like, you know what you should ask Mum?
Oh.
You should ask Mum what she thought of the romance.
Yeah.
as a mum read.
Yeah. Okay. When it started, I knew there was going to be a romance. I could see that coming.
Yeah.
In my heart, I thought, please
don't be too explicit.
Don't go too explicit, because
I could never do that. I could never.
That was I was thinking, every chapter I go, please don't let this be the chapter that I see more than enough what I want to. So. Yes, that made me slightly nervous to be fair.
And it made me nervous, even though I will say it is a book that has, so there's a term in the literary world called spice, how much a book is spicy. And I knew my book had no spice. I knew. But still, there's like a part where you're like, oh, but there's characters that are forming a relationship together, and now Mum wants to read it.
Yeah.
But it really wasn't probably as intense.
No,
because he would have told me, I can't read it.
No, it was fine.
And I don't think I would ever give you a book that had anything.
if there is, just tell me to miss a particular chapter or something. I'm happy with that, because it's different when you know the person and she's your daughter or
that's a bit different.
It is a bit different.
Yes, I think you'd have to probably just say skip that section if you had to.
So in a nutshell, I was quite nervous and about turning the pages, and hopefully it was just quite mild mannered, and it was lovely, so it's still very, very sweet and very nice. So
it's definitely a fade to black moment, which is the term, because it's young adult, and I just don't necessarily.
It's not necessary. I think a lot of
I think in young adult, I think that's my perspective. I'm not sure, but also I would feel more comfortable not writing about that stuff with characters, in the book. Also, that I just didn't feel the need to write that. But so the romance itself in general, I think, is more heavy on like the sweet part of it rather than anything mature.
Yeah.
Which is different, because some people, I've read books where it's definitely, and it's all in the genre of new adult. So there's some, adult content in those, which is still very popular. But for young adult, Mum, you are lucky. But even still, I like writing in young adult anyway, because I feel that I had the most some of my most creative moments were when I was 16, 17, 18, living in a world where I just really enjoyed that time of my life for being able to be creative in a way that didn't feel like there was so much pressure from like the outside world to, I don't know, like at uni or, even working now as an adult. Don't get me wrong, there were still other stresses in my life, but when I was that age, I think I was more, in my own fantasy world, thinking like just happy drawing my characters and writing story. Oh, sorry, I wasn't writing then. I was definitely just drawing characters and living in my own little bubble then. But so that's why that bubble has cut there. So that's why I do like writing in young adult, because I think that time of your life when you are that age, it's still like, I don't know, I think it's really pivotal. And I think it's a special time where you're kind of approaching the next big chapter of your life, and some big moments do happen. I feel like internally you've got to go through a lot of different things. So that's probably why I wanted to write someone who was 17 as the protagonist in here. So, yeah. Oh, well.
Beautifully done.
Beautifully done. Well, I think that should conclude our chat today on the Still Waters Run Deep in-depth interview with my mum, who again was the first person who ever read it other than myself. So thank you so much.
Oh, pleasure, Mum. Thank you for asking.
Part of the journey with me.
Anyway,
we did it. We did it. We had a good old...
I always think that because we
always chat about random things anyway. We're both yappers, as the term is. That's where I get it from.
Right.
But yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for watching or listening, everyone. Still Waters Run Deep comes out 24th of April 2025. It's very exciting.
Yes.
It's coming out.
Yeah.
And also, Alara and the Passing is available on Amazon, on my Etsy store, also in some select bookshops as well. So if you want to read that as well before you get on to Still Waters Run Deep, go for it, but you don't have to. You can go straight into Still Waters Run Deep if you want to. So thank you so much, everyone, and have a good day. That's it. We did it. Yay! Ooh, thank you, Ma. That was amazing. I very much enjoyed that. I hope you did too.
Yeah, I did.